Hello everyone, welcome back to Hare Over a Hill. Today we are actually talking about Venom the Last Dance. So over the last weekend I would have posted this audio, but life has been getting in the way. um, but yeah, Venom the Last Dance. I saw it, and um, like most of my other casual reviews, which I'm gonna link down below and most likely have up here. Um, I don't take that as I didn't like it. I did. Overall, it was an enjoyable film. There were a few. It was far from perfect, but as a quote unquote follow up, but also a quote unquote ending of of like being a send off for a trilogy wasn't bad, but also set up potential future films and whatnot. Um, but there were a number of smaller issues that I saw. Um, this review is going to try to stay away from as many spoilers as possible. I didn't really take notes. I should have, so I can actively remember these things. They did slightly retcon one thing from the Force movie. I watched the prior two movies, though I didn't exactly rewatch them in anticipation for this movie. But if I remember correctly, it was from the Force movie. They somewhat retconned it for a major plot point in this movie. Um, it's like, and it was such a minor thing that's like, oh, okay, hey, that makes some amount of sense. Um, I never actually watched any of the trailers for this, but it's like, why not? I enjoyed the first two movies, thus it's like it was fairly nice. One of the big things that I was primarily having with issues that I was having with this, uh, minor spoilers, though I'm not 100% sure. It might have been spoiled with the trailer. The movie does slightly refocus back on some of the symbiotes again, which, and when I say that, I don't mean uh, like the first movie was like clearly meant to be like, oh, okay, here's like we are setting up the Eddie Brock and Venom, and it's like, okay, how do we integrate Venom without doing anything with Spider-Man? Okay, we have to introduce the concept of Venom is not the only symbiote in the world existence. Okay, and it's like, okay, we dealt with the quote unquote symbiote issue. Um, the second movie is like, okay, we can move away from the symbiotes. Um, the multiple symbiotes are actually no. Um, we there is one, but it's like, okay, we are dealing with Carnage, but it's like pre-existing symbiotes. We can somewhat move away from. We can deal with like the quote unquote children of Venom storylines that a lot of the comics have. But that is okay. We can like move away from that. Here in the second movie, we were introduced to the concept of, oh yeah, they are multiple like they are Venom can quote unquote produce more errors and whatnot. They reintroduced the, hey, congratulations, symbiotes are a thing in the universe. Like there are multiple different symbiotes, and it's like it. they don't play a heavy role. They somewhat do in the final act, but it's one of those situations of, and it's like, oh, or like in the first movie, if I was like solely like go from there to the Last Dance, I would be thinking, oh, we should be treating as if Venom is an outcast. In this movie, it's like that's like there's a slight tonal shift that they forgot how they were setting up. From what I remember from the first movie to how they were setting up this movie with the other symbiotes, that it's like oh, there's a slight tonal shift and whatnot, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. Um, Again, I'm trying to quote unquote uh, avoid any major spoilers with it. Um, the other slight issue that I have with the movie is the retcon that I mentioned earlier. They slightly changed. They added context to uh, a scene from the first movie. Again, slight spoiler for that movie in that apparently Eddie was stabbed, he's dying, Venom saved. Okay, perfect. That was a catalyst that set up the major plot point for The Last Dance. Okay, perfectly fine. The issue that I'm having with that is that it's like, okay, the because Venom saved Eddie in this scene, this set up this. Uh, they mentioned in the first 10. They said like, okay, why is this important? It sets up like the MacGuffin in this movie. Yeah. Um, when we get into the final sequences, the problem that I had was that it's like that guy almost died, and he was saved by a symbiote. Why isn't another like? By we only saw like one death with somebody being saved by a symbiote. Like, shouldn't that have created another MacGuffin? Even though we only saw that only really happened, explained that, and like by the rules that should have been set up, shouldn't another MacGuffin have been created? I would like in part it's a minor thing, but it's like and could probably be hand waved away with say, oh yeah, because there was an actual bond between Eddie and Venom. That's why there was a MacGuffin action created. Um, and they wasn't true for that. But it's like it is one of those things that's like, but it was because it was done so quickly. It's like, oh, this would have been completely and utterly awesome if properly set, like in that they in part properly set it up, and if they started introducing, oh yeah, there's now like a second third MacGuffin, uh, that would have created like interesting stakes, but admittedly, it would take away from the fact of, yeah, the focus on this. This was right at the climax of the movie, getting into the fight, which was a spectacular ending sequence, to say the least. I really enjoyed it, um, but it is one of those small sequences. Um, the only but like I said, a lot of the movies was really fun. I really loved it, and it really like in part it did somewhat like play off some of the other things, but um, like as an independent movie, it's like okay, this like a lot of this makes sense. Um, but as a follow up from the last movie, it was like I am missing something, and it's just one of those like small shifts that's like that if you watch the last movie, it's like okay, and then it's like this happened. It's another minor spoiler, but this in the first 5-10 minutes we find out that for this movie and spoilers from the last movie in part, um, we find out that Eddie is being blamed for what happened at the end of the last movie. Um, okay, I wasn't expecting that necessarily, but okay. Um, and like that sets off the chain of events that go throughout the entire movie. Like I said, the retcon in the first movie sets up the conflict. This just is like, why is Eddie moving? Well, that's from the consequence of the last. Um, but it's like this seems a little bit out of the left field, but it's okay. Um, the only other slight issue that I am having with this movie, and it's just like the symbiote issue. It's another like loading of a Chekhov's gun situation. For those who don't know, a Chekhov's gun is like, okay, here, like it's like me saying, like, oh yes, ignore me and my gun that I'm currently loading. This gun is unimportant. Continue on with it. It's like, look at this gun that's fully loaded that I loaded at the first act. Oh, it's like at the very beginning, it's like, yes, I have a gun, and yes, I'm loading it. Why do you ask? Oh, okay. Ignore it for most of the movie. Then it's like, hey, you remember this gun? Bam. That's a Chekhov gun. That's simplified. It's basically it's like, hey, I'm making this important. Um, don't forget me. And then it's like, and then ignore it for most of the movie. Then the Chekhov's gun is like, to pay it off, you have to fire the gun or use the thing that is more like clearly demonstrating as important at some point. Um, the this Chekhov's gun that I'm implying here was a bartender at the very beginning of the movie. They was like, oh yeah, we are talking. Uh, there was two things. It was like, okay, we are talking to the bartender. Like Eddie reappears at a bar, is teleporting. Like the ending of the second Venom movie is like, oh, Eddie's in a different universe, and this film is like, and we shunt him back to his original universe. Okay, perfect, understandable. And now he's interacting with a bartender of this universe, of his original universe. Okay, perfectly fine. Um, in which he then Venom leaves a teeniest piece of himself. Okay, perfectly fine. And the Eddie and Venom leave. Uh, Government comes in and like starts talking to the bartender. Okay, um, and captures the small piece of the venom that is left behind. In which that small piece is followed up later in the film, and how they follow it up. I was expecting it to go slightly differently, but I appreciate for what it is. It follows some of the logic that was going on. But the bartender was the quote unquote Chekhov's gun here. It's like, okay, like it was one of those things of like, oh, okay, they zap him and paralyze him, it's like, and bring him into a facility. Like, it was like, why are they zapping and knocking him out? The next following scene, or at least involving the government, was clearly somebody, most likely the bartender, in a like, container being transported somewhere. It's like, oh, okay, they're probably gonna do like, okay, they're setting up that they're probably capturing people and bringing it into this facility. That might be all they needed him for, but it's almost as if they're trying to be like, hey, we're going to be doing more with this guy at a later point, but they never actually do. And it's one of those situations of uh, they never actually do, and it's a tad bit disappointing. It, or they never set him up, but then he's involved with the post-credit scene, in which is like, I completely forgot about this guy, and this is how they pay off having him. It's one of those things that's like, it's not disappointing until you realize it, and it's like, no, what the fudge is going on? But yeah, I've been complaining about this film a fair amount for near on 14 minutes now. But like I said, overall, I one of the major things is that the comedy in this movie. Um, if you in part saw my Radiata stories playthrough, one of the major things that I love about the game is the combination of being serious and humor, and how that can they can impart balance. They don't do it well, but the best. They do it better in The Last Dance, and I think that's one of the comedy between Eddie Brock and Venom is top notch, and they've always did that dynamic fairly well. And combined with being serious scenes, I have to appreciate that. Overall, as an independent, as a solo one film, it is a fairly good, and I would almost recommend watching it at some point. It for some of the things I was like, yeah, it's probably worth seeing in the theater to see some of these high like budget action scenes, and seeing it on the big screen is really nice. If you see it in 1 or 2 weeks from now, if it's still in the theaters, definitely go and see it. And I'm just gonna switch over here for a quick movie, just as a small note. Yeah, 39% from reviewers. I'm not in complete agreement, but uh, 80% from most of the moviegoers, I'm in agreement there. Maybe a little bit low, but 80% is not a bad. Uh, yeah, it's not a bad situation to a bad number to have. So yeah. Uh, do I recommend Venom the Last Dance? Yes, wholeheartedly yes. Uh, do you have to run out tonight to go and watch it, or this weekend? Um, no, you don't. But do you have to watch it in theaters? No. Is it gonna be better in theaters? Probably so. But almost wholeheartedly recommend the movie. It is great. So, as always, folks, I'll see you around.